So just a little side note before we actually get into the video. So I started making this video back in January. I was going really strong and then it kind of went on the back burner for a little bit, but I'm finally getting it out now. And I just want to say that since making this dress back in, I think it was February that I finished it, the dress has gone on to be plagiarized. I feel like I should do like a whole story time or something about it just to kind of help spread the word. But yeah, if you have seen this dress from online retailers, just know that I had no involvement in that happening, and it does go directly against the entire point of me even making this dress in the first place. It was meant to be like a one-of-a-kind art piece just for me, and now it's being mass-produced, which is really, really upsetting. The point I'm trying to make is that I am aware that it has been plagiarized. I'm not happy that it's been plagiarized, and I just request that if you see it anywhere, just please don't buy it. Okay, into the video. Okay, the microphone's about to die, but we're gonna do the, oh gosh, we're gonna do this so fast. It's gonna be great. Okay, I'm wearing my shirt to match this video. Let's do this. Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to a new walkthrough. So this one is very special because this is one of my kind of more over-the-top cosplays that I designed myself, and just wanted to do something like really special to like commemorate this game and this character a little while ago. I can't remember exactly when, but I had the idea to do a really fancy like mouthwashing cosplay, because when you have a character who has only one canon design, sometimes you gotta do your own thing. You gotta take matters into your own hands and like make your own fun design. So that's exactly what I decided to do. Now, ironically, see, I wanted to do like a fancy version of her, but then like literally right after I started working on this, the Steam Awards dress came out. So I could have done that, but I already started on this super fancy, original design. So I was like, well, it is what it is. So basically the concept was I wanted to do kind of like a glam, kind of like red carpet looking fancy dress for Anya from Mouthwashing, my name Twinsy. So I decided to basically look up some references of like fancy evening dresses to try and get some inspiration. The main thing that I came across was this, which is like this split design, and I thought that would be cool to kind of do my own little mouthwashing version of. So I eventually decided to do some like painting, do a bunch of rhinestones, and it was just gonna be the dress at first, but then I decided to like add like shoes and like a fascinator, and it really grew as like a project. I really expanded on that main concept as time went on and just like added more and more stuff to it, and I think the results are pretty cool. Yeah, so I just wanted to take you guys through the process of me doing that, and yeah, let's get into it. Okay, this is like my fourth time recording this voiceover because I keep having microphone issues, but we're gonna persevere. So I first started off with a very rough design just to visualize or help visualize what I wanted to do. Obviously, this is not what the final dress looks like. I did alter and change and take away and add things, and this is a completely natural part of the design process. So this is just the starting off point, and then I just kind of changed what I needed to change as I went along. So one thing that I changed was the fact that in the picture there's no fascinator, but I was talking to one of my roommates and she was like, yeah, you should probably do a fascinator. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. So I started off with this little New Year mini hat to use as the base. I took off the little bow and feather and then covered that with some black fleece. It looks real rough, but just, trust the process, important. Then I went ahead and took some foam clay and sculpted all of the different pieces that I wanted. So I want some like eyeballs, I wanted the cake, I thought that would be super cute. And then I also wanted to add like a pill bottle and some pills and a mouthwash bottle. So what I did is I sculpted a bunch of spheres to use as the eyes, and then went ahead and sculpted the cake. Yes, that is a hair comb that I'm using to sculpt it, but you know what, it worked well. I didn't have like actual sculpting tools, so I had to get creative, and it worked out well. This is the cake. I think it looks super cute. And then for the candles, I just added some bamboo skewers that I'd cut up, and just poke those in there. And then I had to let that all sit and cure for at least 24 hours. So since I was chomping at the bit to work on this project, while those were drying, I decided to practice my painting because I was going to paint the entire dress. So I wanted to do eyeballs and mouthwash bottles. So here I am practicing the eyes. Here I am practicing the mouthwash bottles, which was definitely the most challenging thing to paint because like getting the shape right and all the little details is really time consuming and takes some practice. So this practice run was really good. It definitely helped me feel way more confident when it came to actually painting the dress, which we'll get to later. So once the foam clay was cured, I went ahead and painted everything with a variety of acrylic paints, let those dry, and then I began assembling the fascinator. So I started with the pill bottle. I used crazy glue for that, and then I used mostly crazy glue, but I kind of alternated between crazy glue and glue gun glue depending on the piece, mostly because I was running out of crazy glue, so I had to ration my crazy glue. So I started with the big pieces and I did kind of like eyeball it to see if I was happy with the layout before I committed, and I was very happy with it. And then I added these little pill beads, which I absolutely love. I think they look so cool, especially like having them kind of falling out of the bottle. I think looks really, really neat. And then to fill in all the blank spaces, I just took the eyeballs and just put them in there and made sure that they were all facing in different directions just to make it like extra creepy. And then I took some varnish and just like, glossed everything to not only seal the acrylic paint, but to also give it a bit of a shine because that always looks nice. Let that dry, and I think it looks really, really cool. Here's a photo of what it looks like finished. Really stoked about it. Then a different roommate of mine suggested that I make a clutch because it's going to be like a red carpet glam kind of thing. So having a clutch just made sense. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. So this was an ordeal. I'm just going to say it right up front. This was such an ordeal. So I started by trying to make one from scratch. Using pleather. And yes, the pleather is brown because I only had like an abundance of brown pleather. So I thought, I'll just use the brown pleather and then paint it later. We didn't even get to the painting. I tried really hard to like make it nice. But I've never made like a bag like in this kind of shape before. And it went really poorly. So I had to not do that. Don't worry, I did keep the clutch around, and I'm going to use the material as like scraps for future projects. So we're not throwing it away, luckily. So then I realized that I had this purse that I've had for many years now, and the strap was broken and it just kind of sat around not being used. So I decided to take that, I disassembled it, and then the plan was to, again, take pleather, cut 2 bottle-shaped pieces of pleather, and then like sandwich the bag in between. This was a terrible idea. This did not work. I got pretty far with it. Here I am like painting the bag to make it a base. Oh, and here I am. This is completely, well, not completely, but this is pretty unrelated. I had to take a break because I was getting so frustrated with the clutch. So I decided to decorate these little photo cards to use in my mouthwashing Ita bag. Very cute. Love it. This was my first time ever doing photo cards, and it was a lot of fun to get to decorate them. Anyway, returning to the clutch, it looks really bad. And here I am gluing everything together. It looked rough. And so then I was like, oh, maybe I'll just like cut the edges. It was like, when was this footage taken? Hold on. I need to know now. Gosh. It was almost 6 a.m. in the morning. Okay. I promise I usually sleep, but I was having insomnia and it was a whole thing. So basically I had like done the first thing trying to sandwich the bag in between the 2 pieces of pleather, and then that didn't work. So I like decided to like cut the edges off and like glue those down to make it was bad. It doesn't make sense. Is my brain in the room right now? No, it was not in the room right now. So I decided to scrap that and go to bed. Then I came back refreshed after sleeping, and I had figured out what I was going to do. So instead, this was the winning strategy. So instead, I traced out the different parts of the bag. So we have the back, the front, and then the side. I traced those out of this aquamarine colored fabric, which I happen to have, and it's the perfect color, and I was very happy. And then paired that up with a just a white fabric, because I didn't have enough to like make the front and the lining side blue. So I just used some white twill for the back, and then basically sewed those together, turned them inside out, pressed them, and then glued those straight onto the bag. And this worked so much better. Like it still has its issues, because I've never done anything like this before. So, there's some things that could look better, but for what it was, I think it was successful. Okay, so then I had to make the front piece. That's where the label's gonna go. So here I am drawing out the label, and don't worry, that is a fabric marker, so it is gonna come out. Yeah, it just kind of like evaporates over time. It like slowly disappears. That's pretty cool. So I use that as like a guide, added the labels using the same white twill, and then drew everything out and used a mixture of acrylic paint and fabric medium to paint everything. This was a great way to go. I was going to get like a set of fabric, like specific fabric paints. That would have been so much more expensive, but then you just get a bottle of the fabric medium, and you can just mix that with all of your existing acrylic paints, because if you're like me, you have a lot of acrylic paint.
These are my ladies.
And just like it worked so much better, and it was so much cheaper, so I was really happy with that. So here I'm painting that, and then the thing is, you do have to like set it with the iron, foreshadowing for what's to come. So I did that on the label. This is me adding fray check to the little openings I have here for the hardware, which is basically that chain that like goes through the bag. It didn't work very well. It still looks bad, so I do need to like figure that out. But then I took some bias tape that I had left over from a project I never did and glued that on. So you'll notice it's not the right color. And just to preface this, I should preface this before, but my goal for this part of the project was to try and use as much stuff that I had lying around the house to make it. I did obviously buy the rhinestones that I'm going to add, but for everything else, I wanted to try and use things that I had already and not spend any money on it, which I succeeded in doing. So part of that was using this bias tape, giving it a new life, because it's been sitting around for years. And so I just painted that with the same fabric medium and acrylic paint mixture. Does it look rough? Yes it does. But we're learning, and now we are moving on to week 2. So week 2, I was basically waiting for stuff to arrive in the mail and waiting for my fabric to be ready for pickup, because it was during Dresso's big sale for Boxing Day, and they got so overwhelmed with orders. They had like 800 orders or something. So obviously it took a while to get the fabric. So I had to preoccupy myself during that time. I decided to do shoes. I wasn't going to do shoes, but then I thought, I could make some fun glam washing shoes. So that's what we did. So I started off by taking these shoes that I got like on a really good, I got a really good deal on these shoes. And then I went ahead and sculpted everything that I needed. So we have some mouthwash bottles again, we have some eyeballs again, and then I did cut up a pill bottle because I have a lot of those lying around because, neurodivergent, taking meds, all that good stuff.
Ooh, I'm mentally ill.
And I did cut them in half, but I didn't use my Dremel, which I should have done. I didn't want to break out the Dremel. So I used wire cutters, which did the job, but it could have been better. Then while the foam clay was curing, I practiced painting some lettering because I wanted to paint the "I hope this hurts" and "take responsibility" on each of the shoes. So I did a little test run, and I was able to go ahead and paint that right onto the shoes, which was very nerve-wracking. Let me tell you, my hands were so shaky, not super shaky, but I was nervous. There's some parts where I think it could be better, but overall I'm very happy with how it came out. Then clay was still curing, so I decided, since there was a stain, I accidentally got some fabric paint on part of the clutch where there shouldn't have been fabric paint. I decided to take the practice eyeballs that I have, cut them out, and then add some fray check to the edges, and then I just glued those right over the stain, which is nice because now the clutch looks interesting from the front and the back, so that's a fun extra little detail. Then once the foam clay finally dried, I was able to start painting everything, and then I also took the pill bottles and the pill beads and glued those on. Now this was my first time ever using E6000. Before you ask, yes, I did wear a respirator, and yes, I did make sure that there was good ventilation. I didn't wear gloves though. I did use these tweezers, but like I should have used gloves, I think. I'm pretty sure you're supposed to use gloves, looking back. Anyway, it was a little bit of a disaster because I am so not used to glues not drying right away, because I usually use crazy glue and that's like a quick drying thing. So I struggled a little bit with that. So it's kind of messy, but you know, we're learning new things, so you know that's good. Finished up the painting, painted the eyeballs, painted the details on the mouthwash bottles, and then I was able to glue everything on using the E6000. Now for the eyeballs, I did cut the backs off of them so that they'd lay flat against the heel of the shoe, but I didn't just do it like directly in the back for all of them. I cut them at different like points in the back so that when they get glued to the heel of the shoe, they'd be pointing in all different directions to make it look, you know, extra creepy. Then once everything was dry, I went in and put some layers of varnish on just to add an extra shine and to help seal the painted surface, and also to add some extra protection just in case anything, you know, like bangs into the shoes. There's kind of like a buffer layer there. Then my rhinestones arrived for the clutch, so I added those to the edges where the bias tape is. I will be completely honest, I did this to cover up the bias tape because the bias tape looked kind of rough, but it also, you know, made it nice and like glam, so that's cool. And yes, I am using tweezers and a bamboo skewer to do this because my rhinestone pen hadn't come in the mail yet. It took way longer to do it this way, but you know, I wanted to get a move on, so you gotta do what you gotta do. Bedazzled all the red parts, and then it was just a matter of waiting for the orange rhinestones to come in. Then we're moving on to week 3. Finally, my orange rhinestones came in the mail and the rhinestone pen, which is great. So I was able to do all the orange parts of the clutch. Here it is all finished. I was pretty happy with it. Like, it looks very homemade, but I was still, you know, quite proud of myself for what I had accomplished. It's my first time ever doing anything like this, so, you know, gotta take the wins where we can get them. Then it was time to start making the dress, the actual dress. I started off with a bodice pattern. So I'm using different patterns for the bodice and skirt. So this is the bodice, this is the pattern that I took it from, and I just traced it out because I would have to do some heavy alterations to it. So the first thing I had to do was I had to make it like strapped on one side. So I cut the second little like sleeve whole part off, and then it was going to be half black, half blue, so I had to draw where that split was going to go. Once I had everything figured out, I was able to cut out my fabrics, and then I sewed the two pieces together, gave them a really good pressing and everything, and then added the darts to each side. And then I basically just repeated the same process for the back. The back was quite a bit more challenging than the front, but you know, I managed to figure it out in the end. So I did the same process, you know, cut everything out, sewed everything together, gave it a good pressing and everything. And then I went ahead and just sewed everything together just like you would normally sew a bodice together. And I did line it just to give it some extra like thickness, because I'm not going to be wearing a bra underneath. Then it was time for the painting. So I mixed this fabric medium with acrylic paint, and then it was just a matter of painting everything. So obviously I started with the bodice, and I would later do the skirt. Painted all these creepy eyeballs and a bunch of the mouthwash bottles, which was definitely the more challenging part, although both had their challenges. Here I'm going in with a bamboo skewer because I had used a paintbrush to do the veins initially, and it looked so bad. It was like the paintbrush was way too thick. So I instead decided to use a bamboo skewer because I was thinner. It was very time consuming, very tedious because it doesn't hold paint the same way a paintbrush does, but it got the job done in the end. And then I was able to finish up the mouthwash bottles, and then I had to iron every single painted area for 3 to 5 minutes in order to set them, which was my least favorite part of this project by far. Oh my gosh, it was so time consuming and I hated it. I had to get a video on so that I could like more easily pass the time. I was watching the H-Bomber guy plagiarism video for like the 4th time, which was very good entertainment.
Foreshadowing is a literary device, and
But yes, it was very tedious, so did not enjoy that. And then it was time to rhinestone everything. So here I am adding some rhinestones. This is only like a little bit of the rhinestones that I ended up adding on. I ended up going like really ham with the rhinestones. So this is just kind of like a portion of the rhinestones, but there's way more in the final dress. Then I moved on to the skirt. I'm using like a vintage pattern for the skirt. I totally winged this part because I am missing part of that skirt pattern, and also it's not in my size. So I had to kind of measure this one piece of the skirt and make sure that it was going to have the width that I needed, and just kind of put blind faith in it. And luckily it gave me the exact shape that I wanted in the end. But I basically, like, you're supposed to do the front back, side front, side back, but I just did like the front 4 times and it ended up working really well. So, you know, sometimes these things work out, and yeah. So I sewed both colored pieces together so that we would have one blue piece and one black piece, pressed my seams, and then did the same thing that I did on the bodice, just painting everything on, which was kind of fun, but very time consuming and very tedious, which is, you know, kind of a trend with this cosplay. Then I made a slit in the dress, but I did it wrong. I did it on the side seam, which I thought would like be perfect, but actually for a slit you want it to be slightly towards the front so that your leggy can properly poke out. So it's not really like for the leggy anymore, it's for just being able to walk easier, which, you know, I'll take it. But yeah, I did some seam binding to make it a nice clean edge, and then I was able to paint all my eyeballs on. Now here's the thing about the eyeballs. I initially just put the red on top and it looked really bad. It worked better on the bodice, but when I got to the skirt, it just looked really bad. So I had to teach myself how to like blend the paint, which I'm really happy with. So unfortunately, the eyes get better as you go down the dress. So the ones on the bodice are not nearly as good as like the ones on the skirt, but you know, c'est la vie. I could have gone back and repainted the ones on the bodice, but I already rhinestoned it actually. So I wouldn't have been able to like set it with the iron. So yeah, we were locked in at that point. Added the veins using the bamboo skewer, and then add some highlights to the eyes, and then it was time to iron it all. Iron it all for so long, so much ironing, oh my gosh. But yeah, we did in the end. Then I was able to assemble the rest of the dress, and then a suggestion from my roommate was to make the bodice and the skirt kind of blend together better so that seam there wouldn't be as obvious. They suggested that I paint extra eyeballs and bottles over that seam. So that's what I did, and it worked really well. And then it was time to rhinestone for a very long time. But you know what? I had fun with the rhinestones. It was kind of like calming just to put on a podcast and just spend hours adding rhinestones. I personally listened to a bunch of the Sad Boys podcast with Jordan and Jarvis, and I really enjoyed it. So that was fun. And yeah, I also added blood rhinestones to the front. I don't have any footage of that because I forgot to film it, but yeah, just a lot of rhinestoning. And then it was time to shoot the cosplay. I had a very specific vision for this shoot because this is a project that I put a lot of like passion and work into, so I wanted to make sure that it was like a cool photo shoot. So I got this really neat foil backdrop and installed it in my studio. And then I also got this lens filter, which is this 8-sided star lens filter. And then my plan was to have a red backlight to catch the lens filter but also reflect off of the foil to give it like a really cool kind of, obviously like horror game, you know, inspired look, but still glam. I don't know how to explain it, but I had a lot of fun shooting this, aside from my feet hurting from my shoes, and then you couldn't even see the shoes in the finished photos, but whatever, it's cool. I think the photos came out super neat. Then in addition to the like final vision, the shoot that you just saw was like the vision that I had from the beginning, but when I first finished the dress and I didn't have my backdrop and everything yet. I did take some test photos, which I think are also quite nice. So I wanted to show them here. So now we're going to talk about the journey of wearing this dress throughout the con season this year. So the first con that I wore it to, this was its debut convention, and that was Fan Expo Vancouver, which I didn't expect this, but just like it was the smallest convention that I wore it to, but it actually got like the best reception at that con. People were so nice. The reactions were so like priceless and heartwarming. So I had a great time there.
Hello. Hello. Miss Pony Express. Pony Express. Time for lunch. So good.
So, hello.
Hello.
But no kisses blown for Jimmy.
None.
None. Kiss this. Yeah, for sure.
The shoes. Look at those.
This one is not
slay. They say.
Everybody go and watch Justin's cosplay music videos and say, thank you, Justin. You're awesome, Justin. We stand Justin. Okay. The second convention that I wore it to this year was Emerald City Comic Con.
Oh my god, it's Anya at Emerald City Comic Con! Oh my god, Mouthwashing! Whoa! Oh my god!
I thought it was going to be kind of like more recognized at a bigger convention, but it's actually the opposite. Like very few people actually like got what it was, which was honestly pretty surprising, but like whatever, you really can't predict these things. The last event that I wore it to was the SakuraCon Masquerade, and my friend Jade decided to make a matching curly outfit, and she did such a good job. She looks so good. Here she is rizzing me up.
Woo!
We actually only spent like 10 minutes at the actual dance, but we took a lot of like funny photos and videos afterwards, and that was really, really fun. It was just like really cool to see someone match, because I never thought like I'd ever have anyone to match with this cosplay. So like that was a really nice way to kind of finish off this cosplay's con circuit for the year. And that's it. Now on to my wrap-up thoughts. So first of all, I don't know when I'm gonna do it, but I need to fix the zipper. The zipper in the back is really bad. Really bad. So I'm gonna try and like fix that before con season starts. I think it all came out really well. It was definitely, like it definitely had its challenges, especially the painting. But overall, I think given it was my first time doing a lot of stuff, like it was my first time like bedazzling a garment that much. Like I had bedazzled shoes before, but not like a garment. And it was my first time doing such involved and like more like realistic. It's not like super realistic, but it's like more realistic than I'm used to fabric painting. And it was my first time like using a fabric medium and decorating shoes like that, using E6000 to add designs. So I think given how many learning opportunities there were and how much I was able to accomplish, I think it was very successful, and I feel great in it. And I'm really stoked that I got to do such an involved build and was able to like pull it off to a point that I was happy with. I think that's really exciting. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me today and watching, and I'll see you guys all next time. But until then, Panda Faces, please be sure to take care. Bye.